In today's video, we're going to be naming the next NHL captains. Now, currently there are 7 NHL teams who do not have a team captain heading into the 2018-19 season. So in this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on who they should select as their next captain, assuming they name one for the upcoming season. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top here, I wanted to do something a little different today in this video. I wanted to discuss who should be the next NHL captains. Now, it's not usual for us to have this many teams to go this long without having a team captain. Obviously, these captaincies have been vacated due to different reasons, either trades, free agencies, in some cases retirement as well. So I wanted to give you my selections on who I would pick to be the next captain for these franchises heading into the 2018-19 season. Now, of course, this is just my opinion, and it is possible that some or all of these teams may, again, choose to not have a team captain for the upcoming season. So based on the current roster as of today, this is my selections on who I would make captain for these franchises. First up, let's get started here with the Buffalo Sabres. Now, if I were the Buffalo Sabres, the player I would name captain right now would be Jack Eichel. Now, Jack Eichel was obviously a very high draft pick, number 2 overall. He's given a long-term, hefty contract. He's certainly the cornerstone of this franchise. Now, they do have some other up-and-coming prospects as well, but they're going to be a couple years at least before they'd be in a position to be named a captain of an NHL club. Obviously, guys like Casey Mittelstadt or Rasmus Dahlin. I do think Dahlin potentially could be a future NHL captain. I could see that happening, but you certainly want to give him at least a couple years' time before you put that kind of pressure on a brand new NHL player. Drafted number 1 overall or not. Certainly not going to go into his very first season with the C on his jersey. Eichel's already got a few years under his belt and has proven that he's got a strong skill set, and he can certainly be a leader with this Buffalo Sabres team. A couple key reasons why I'd pick Eichel is, one, he's under contract for a long time to the Buffalo Sabres, so obviously he's going to be around a long time, so you kind of get some continuity going. I do think he shows some pretty decent leadership qualities, and I do think it's somebody who should be able to lead with on-ice play as well, and he certainly exemplifies that at a high level. So for me, the Buffalo Sabres' next captain should be Jack Eichel. Next up, we got the Arizona Coyotes. Now, the Coyotes have been without a captain since Shane Doan retired. Obviously, before last season, he was not offered a new deal with the Coyotes, opted to go into retirement, and they have not had a captain ever since. Based on their current roster and everything going on in the Coyotes, personally, I think the obvious choice is Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Now, Ekman-Larsson just inked a new 8-year extension with the Coyotes, so you know he's going to be part of the team for a long time. He's still relatively young, but he still has a lot of experience as well. He's arguably one of their top players, if not their top player. He leads by his play on the ice. He's a solid player. He's looked like he's a really solid person. He's good with the team, good with the media. So personally, I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson is really an obvious choice. The Coyotes do have a lot of other younger, strong players who are working their way up to help that franchise move forward. But personally, I just think that with the amount of experience that Ekman-Larsson has, the way he leads on the ice, I think he's the obvious choice. Next up, we get the Vancouver Canucks. Now, the Vancouver Canucks former captain Henrik Sedin obviously came to a retirement here at the end of last season with the Sedin brothers, kind of going through their final hurrah in Vancouver and their careers coming to an end. As we know, the Vancouver Canucks are in rebuilding mode. They have a lot of solid young players, a lot of solid young prospects. They do have some good veterans mixed in there as well. Obviously, if you take a look at some of the veterans on that team, there's certainly some of them that do have leadership type qualities. But for me, I would want to go with a player who I think is going to be around longer term. I think the best choice for the Canucks would be Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat is not brand new to the Canucks. He's been around for a few years. He's exemplified some strong play on the ice. He's a pretty good, solid two-way player. He's a hard worker. He's going to be there long-term as well because of his contract. So for me, I think Horvat is an obvious choice. I mean, you do have some other great leaders on the team as well. Obviously, they have guys like a Brendan Sutter, like a Sam Gagner, like a Jay Beagle. They got that veteran presence. They can certainly provide some leadership as well. But personally, I think they'd be more guys who could potentially wear an A, provide some insulation and some backup for a guy like Horvat to take the C on. I'm a big fan of Horvat's game. I think he shows a lot of great leadership qualities on the ice, and he would be my selection to be the next captain of the Vancouver Canucks. Next up, we get the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the Vegas Golden Knights obviously have one season under their belt, but it was one heck of a season at that. A bit of a Cinderella story in their inaugural season, not only making the playoffs, not only winning their division, but going all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals and coming just oh so close to winning Lord Stanley's Cup in the first year. I can just imagine what kind of headline that would have made if it actually would have came to be. They were so close. And the question is, can they get back to do it again? And do they need a captain to kind of maybe help along with that process? Obviously, they decided not to name a captain. They had a few different guys wear the A throughout the year, but they didn't go with a captain for their first season. Now, again, some of these teams don't necessarily need a captain. It's not necessarily going to make or break their performance on the ice. But I find sometimes in some situations you do have a lot of guys who can be leaders, and sometimes you just need a go-to guy who can kind of take it upon himself that he knows it's his job to kind of get that team going. Sometimes when you get too many leaders, they might lean on each other, and they're thinking, well, he can kind of help get the team going. Maybe it can be somebody else tomorrow or the next day. It's just, I find sometimes it helps to have a defined role. It depends on the team, really. Some teams need that, some teams do not. Now, I know in most of these other cases, the guys I picked for captains are younger players. They're guys that are under contract for a long time. And I think those are all great qualities, and it can, to a degree, can be very important in selecting who your next captain would be. But in Vegas's situation, I would go with defenseman DERYCK Engelland. Now, I know Engelland's not under contract for a super long time. He's not a younger player. He's kind of towards the latter end of his career. But for me, when everything kind of got going with Vegas' first season, obviously they had the unfortunate incident right before the season started with the shooting situation in the city there, and it was a bad situation. But obviously DERYCK Engelland showed a lot of great leadership qualities right off the get-go. He had a great speech there on opening night, and this really seems like he's really taken it upon himself. Also being the local guy, he's lived in Vegas for a long period of time before the Knights ever came to be. So he's good with the area. He's really good with the team. Obviously, as guys were coming to Vegas to join the club, he was helping them get situated. He was kind of like a go-to person to help them find places to live and learn where to go and what's in the city, and kind of be like a tour guide a little bit, if you will. And he just seemed to really show a lot of great leadership qualities with the team. And even though he didn't have the C on his jersey during last year's playoff run, I felt like a lot of times when they needed it, he was kind of their go-to guy for that motivation and leadership to look to. So as much as they do have some other guys, especially in the forward group, and as well as a couple other defenders who could potentially wear the C at some point in time, I think a guy like a Marchessault or Riley Smith as a potential candidates down the road. Even a guy like Nate Schmidt, to me, showed a lot of great qualities as well. I would go with DERYCK Engelland as a captain, at least on a short-term basis. Hard to say how long more he continues to play, probably for another couple of years. At that point in time, you'd have somebody else be able to take over, hopefully on a longer-term contract, and kind of solidify the C for years to come, and give them a little bit more time to kind of ease into their roles as being leaders upon that team. So for me, I'd go with DERYCK Engelland, at least for the short term for the Vegas Golden Knights. Next up, I want to discuss the New York Rangers. Obviously, the Rangers are now without a captain after trading former captain Ryan McDonough to the Tampa Bay Lightning near the NHL trade deadline during the 17-18 season. So now, who could the Rangers name for a new captain? Well, if you look around their lineup, obviously there's not a ton of veterans around. They're really going with a youth movement, the younger, faster, skilled players. So there is going to be a lot of younger guys in the Rangers lineup in the 18-19 season. Now, one potential candidate certainly could be Matt Zuccarello. Obviously, he certainly has the experience, obviously a veteran on the team. But the only issue I have with Zuccarello is he only has 1 year left on his deal, and he was a player who was also mentioned a lot in NHL trade rumors towards the end of last season. So it certainly is a little bit unclear how long his future is to be with the Rangers. So he certainly may not be with them long term. At this point in time, I don't think it makes sense to name a team captain if you're not sure he's going to be with the team beyond the current season. Now, of course, another veteran forward who could possibly be a good candidate as well would be Chris Kreider. Obviously, Kreider certainly plays hard, plays with an edge at times, can score some goals, and could certainly prove to be a top player for this Rangers forward group moving forward. But personally, I think the guy they're going to select is a guy who's incredibly close with new head coach David Quinn, and that's defenseman Kevin Shattenkirk. They've worked together in the past. This is not the first time that Quinn's been the head coach for Shattenkirk. When you factor in how close Kevin Shattenkirk is with David Quinn, how well he knows him and he can trust him to be a leader out there on the ice, I do think that there's a strong possibility they're going to go with Shattenkirk as the next captain of the New York Rangers. Now, you factor in that Shattenkirk's been an alternate captain at the NHL level before. He is one of their top defensemen, puts up a lot of points in the power play, so he could certainly be looked upon as a leader with this team. He does have a longer-term contract, more than most with this Rangers club as well, so he's likely going to be sticking around for some time. So for me, given the fact that how well Quinn knows Shattenkirk, the fact that Shattenkirk's got a longer-term contract, worn an A before at the NHL level, I do think there's a really strong possibility that the New York Rangers' next captain is going to be Kevin Shattenkirk. Now, certainly feel free to leave your comments down below. I know that might come as a surprise to some of you, given some of the other options on this team. But for me, I think that's the choice the Rangers are going to go with. Now, next up here, let's take a look at the New York Islanders. Now, obviously, the Islanders lost their captain, Johnny Tavares, to free agency this summer in the biggest story, blockbuster move of free agency with Tavares going to Toronto. So, obviously, now the New York Islanders are without a captain. So, when you take a look at their roster, there are, a fair bit of options they could consider here. A couple of guys that certainly do show leadership qualities on and off the ice and are pretty good leaders within the room would be a guy like Cal Clutterbuck or Johnny Boychuk. The only problem for me is they both had a lot of injury problems the last couple of years. They're getting up there as well, and I'm not sure that, even though they can be leaders, that they'd be the best candidates. One of the longest tenured players on the team is Josh Bailey, but as long as he's been there, he's never even worn an A. So it kind of must be something to that. Obviously, the Islanders don't really see him as being a leader. Obviously, he's had pretty good play on the ice and improved a lot over the years. But then again, a leadership role is not for everyone, and maybe that's just not Bailey's personality. Another guy you could consider would be Nick Leddy. I mean, he's 27 years old. He's arguably now their top defenseman in that top pair spot. He does play some big minutes, play a big role. Certainly can play a bit of a leadership role. He's worn an A at times, on and off. So he certainly does have some leadership qualities. You could consider Nick Leddy, but for me, I'd go with youngster Matthew Barzal. Now, some of you may disagree with that, and that's fine. You can let me know in the comments what you think. But if you look at today's NHL, it's not uncommon to see younger superstars take on this type of role. Now, I think Barzal's well positioned for a leadership role within the Islanders organization now. Without Tavares there, this is definitely his team. He's their top player offensively. He's going to be the catalyst to determine how much success they have in the near future here. Obviously, the Islanders need to continue to build around him, and if they don't, they're going to end up in the same situation they did with Tavares. Obviously, you have some great talent, but it takes more than one guy to build a winning franchise. So for me, Barzal was a captain and junior in the Western Hockey League for Seattle when he played there. He showed tremendous qualities of leadership during that period of time in his career. He's certainly a leader on the ice. I would go with Barzal as captain. I'd probably name Leddy and Boychuk as your alternates, maybe Clutterbuck, or they could rotate between the three of them. But personally, that's would be my choice. Once Barzal's entry-level deal comes to an end, you try to lock him up on a long-term 7 or 8 year deal. Then you've got your new captain, like you did with Tavares, but this time they need to get it right and build around him better so they have more opportunity, and obviously want to entice these guys to stick around and build this into a winning franchise. Now let's jump over, last but not least, here to the Toronto Maple Leafs, where the former Islanders captain now plays in Toronto. Now for me, this was the toughest choice. I did some research around the internet, kind of getting different takes and different opinions to see what other people were thinking, and kind of think about it myself and come to what the conclusion should be. The Maple Leafs definitely have a couple of players for sure, 2 or 3 guys that could take on this role. The thing you got to remember, obviously, is the player needs to want to be the captain. That certainly helps. And they have to show the right qualities, leadership. And Toronto media is one of the toughest media to deal with in all of hockey. Obviously, the Canadian markets are a little bit tougher on some of these guys than depending on, for example, if they're in a smaller market in the US, you can kind of fly under the radar a little bit and you don't deal with so much media pressure. But Toronto is big time media pressure. You have to deal with reporters in your face all the time. And it does take a certain personality to be able to handle that and handle it well. The big debate here is, do you go with Matthews or do you go with Tavares? I think there's an argument to be made for both players, and it really boils down to who wants to be what. Obviously, John Tavares is used to being a captain. He's been a captain in the NHL for a long time. Matthews is yet to be one, and there certainly have been some question marks around, even if he wants to be, because you can tell sometimes when he's dealing with Toronto media, yes, he's a younger player too, so it's hard to say just how comfortable he would be or if he wants to have that C put on his jersey. In all honesty, I think the most logical choice here would be to go with Tavares and let Matthews play more of a secondary leadership role. Matthews very well may be the primary scorer. He might be the primary point producer, and he very well could outgun Tavares on the score sheet. That's certainly a possibility, but he could let Tavares handle more of the media and more of the interviews and kind of take the pressure off him that way. It might actually help with his on-ice performance, really. Matthews could certainly wear an A on his jersey, no problem. Tavares, like I said, he's got a lot of experience. He's from the area. He's been a captain with the Islanders. So from the general consensus that I could find online, it seemed to be the most logical choice here is John Tavares. Now, this is obviously the most debated captain, I think, amongst all these teams. You could certainly make an argument for Austin Matthews as well. You could go both ways. I'm leaning towards Tavares, but I'd love to hear your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Who should be the next captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs? Now, I certainly think there's a fair argument as well to say that the Leafs may not even name a captain for the coming season in 18-19 here. I don't think it's something they absolutely have to do by any means. They've been without a captain for a while, ever since former captain Dion Phaneuf was traded to Ottawa. So it's been a while since they've had a player wear the C on their jersey. So I think in a way you could say maybe it's time they go ahead and bring that back to the team. But, you know, they could choose not to, and it's not something that's certainly, required or it's going to really help them win more games or whatnot. But in some cases, like I said, depending on the team and the group, sometimes it helps to have a defined captain and a defined role on who to go to for leadership in certain situations. But depending on the group too, you don't really need it sometimes. They've proven last year they can be a winning team without it. But obviously the group dynamics have changed a little bit here. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Let me know what you think on the Maple Leafs. So those are my selections for the next captain of the NHL teams who currently do not have one. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments and who you would pick to be captain of these franchises. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there is plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.